The legend of Mindanao is all about an ordeal love which is in a kingdom and a king named Sultan Kumpit together with his very beautiful daughter named Minda and a lover named Lanao who undergo a test together with his fellow lover to seek to win a pledge of marriage and dreaming to be a husband of a beautiful Minda. And after all those 3 tests, Lanao, a lover from another kingdom, declared and honored as a husband of Minda, the daughter of Sultan Kumpit. As the year passed, the island of Thir kingdom were named Minda Lanao, and as the decade passed they also called in a shortcut way Mindanao, which is what we use till now. Mostly of all Filipino parents, they scrupled first the man that will marry their daughter, and in the story the lovers will undergo the tests to ensure that the man who will marry to his daughter will do anything just to fulfill her needs. That was just like in our common traditions back in 20th century.
The story tells that there was a giant named Indal, and the citizen of their town is always scared of Indal, and everything what Indal wants the citizen of their town they humbly give it as fast as they can. If you do not give what Indal wants, Indal will lift you up and throw it either in a mud or sharp rocks that will causes you death, so that citizens in their town are always afraid they forced to give what Indal wants. Suddenly in the night, there was a heavy rain together with a thunder and a sharp lightning. Citizens are much more afraid of that phenomenon than Indal. Then when the rain stopped, the message was arrived to Indal that the citizens are more afraid to that phenomenon than Indal. So that Indal waited until the phenomenon was happened again. Indal saw lightnings which terrified the citizens always. With that, Indal run from it and wanted to catch that lightnings. Then due to the darkness his foot caught in the mango tree and fell in a deep ravine. Every time he insists and tries to jump up and rebound, the earth trembles, which makes people dizzy in their house. Every time the earth shakes they say it is Indal who is struggling to get up into the pit. When they feel the ground shaking they immediately say it's Indal. So every time there is an earthquake, we immediately shout Lindal, Lindal. Like us Filipinos in the past, we worship the Anitos when something bad happens, just like in the story. In a farm on the east side of the river with a married couple, they have an only daughter. Unlike ordinary children, Pacifica is quiet and silent. People call her Paz. Because the school is far from their place of residence, Paz is no longer studying, but that did not make Paz smart. She loves to read, and her mother is her teacher. Her father always brought home various books. When Paz finished helping with the housework, she played alone and strolled along the river. She grew up to be a very beautiful
There
and
is a young
intelligent
Spanish
woman.
man who really likes Paz, but like everyone else, he is also hesitant to shout at the girl. He just fit in with the wild look. One day Paz and Serafin met on the river and yet got along with Paz. They boarded the boat and went for a walk in the river, and there was a young man who also boarded his boat. But he was not used to riding and swerved, and suddenly the Spanish young man tilted and fell into the river and drowned immediately.
Serafin helped, but Serafin did not catch up with the only shout of the Spanish young man he heard saying, "Paz sigue me, Paz sig," and unfortunately the young Spanish man died due to his drowning in the river. Since then, Paz has been sad. He often remembers the young Spanish man who died and drowned his name. She sings Kundiman offering to the Spanish young man when she is in the river. In memory of the Spanish young man, the river was named Pasig, and Paz was called the Mutya of the Pasig River.
As in the story, the Filipinos are naturally capable and they are looking for ways to sustain their lives, and the Filipinos are naturally fond of song, just like the Kundiman songs. The Filipinos are also naturally helpful and caring.
If you've ever dropped a piece of food on the floor or your table, chances are you went ahead and picked it up as if nothing happened, saying something along the lines of "Wala pang 5 seconds. 5 seconds haven't passed yet." This is one of those trickier myths to debunk, simply because conflicting research about it exists. Some researchers have said that this practice is perfectly safe, and that contamination does depend on the amount of time a substance spends exposed or in contact with potential contaminants.
On the other hand, recent research reveals that this practice isn't as soon as we've been led to believe, and that following the 5-second rule may actually put your health at risk. It's best to stay on the safe side, though, so forget the piece of bread you dropped and just get a new one. Most likely, Filipinos are very careful in terms of cleanliness of food. They don't usually pick up a food that drops to the floor. However, Filipinos are very thrifty. Sometimes they don't even think about the germs or bacteria that contaminates the food from the floor. Simply put, as soon as the clock strikes 12 on January 1st, the vertically challenged person should jump up and down in order to get taller over the course of the next year. It's a New Year's Day tradition that is perhaps as famous and persistent as the "our house must be decorated with round objects on New Year's Eve" superstition. Unfortunately, since one's height heavily relies on just two things, genetics and nutrition, it is highly unlikely that any New Year's skipping would give you that height boost you wanted. Filipinos are easy to believe. That's why even that story we usually do it in order to increase our height, even if it's not true. But Filipinos, we treasured everything as long as we can't harm ourselves and theirselves.
We're not quite sure where or how this bizarre story started. Basically, it involves straight up drinking or eating any ants you find swimming in your coffee or crawling on your plate. Unfortunately, there's no scientific evidence whatsoever that eating ants will help you hit those high notes. However, this story's probably just the brainchild of someone who, long ago, felt too lazy to just pick the poor insects out of their food with a fork. We Filipinos, we stick to belief of someone's who tried then succeeded of what he had thought about our voice, we likely whether it's true or not. As long as we eat, then we also treasures every beliefs of what we had. The Girl Who Turned Into a Fish and Other Classic Philippine Water Tales is narrated by Maria Elena Paterno. This Filipino folktale talks about a beautiful girl who grew up being vain and spoiled. She was admiring her beauty by the river when the chief of crabs adored her beauty and spoke to her. She was shocked and shoved away the crab. In return, the chief scratched her face and cursed her to become a fish with many scales. Sometimes, Filipino traditions, they punished their children when something bad done, like the crab. He cursed the girl with very ugly attitude to realized her that she was wrong with it. Why the Piña Has 100 Eyes is narrated by Nenny Sta. Romana Cruz depicts the folktale about Penang, an adorable yet lazy girl. The time came when her mother asked her to cook, which she ignored at first. When she finally agreed to do it, she could not find the ladle. Her frustrated mother hoped that Penang could grow 100 eyes for being lazy and so that she could find everything. Later on, Penang disappeared and then a yellow fruit with 100 eyes grew in their backyard. There's something like us Filipinos that we're also lazy sometimes. Then our mother shouted it, throwing words about that. Then at the end our mother speaks like in the story. Another Philippine folktale from Mabel Cook Cole is The Man with the Coconuts. It narrates the story about a man who gathered his coconuts and loaded it to his horse. He asked a boy how long it would take for him to go home. "If you go slowly, you will arrive very soon, but if you go fast, it will take you all day," said the boy, and the man found it strange. So he hurried his horse, and every time he does this, the coconuts would fall. He was able to reach home when it was already night time. As what the story told us, we usually using a carabao with the wheel that can be loaded anything, and as you can see the story highlights the farmer and his carabao with a coconut loaded from it, and it reflects as Filipinos that we actually do what the story told.